Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey here once again, and with the DC Universe kicking off in the larger market, otherwise known as the cinema, later this year with the release of Superman in roughly the middle of July, it will kick off, hopefully, at the very least, a lot of excitement going forward for future DC Universe projects to come, and hopefully one of those future projects is that of Green Arrow. Of course, this is a character that is yet to appear in film, in live action specifically, though there have been a couple of iterations on TV with like Smallville and of course Arrow, respectively. Of course, Arrow being responsible for the rise in knowledge of the character, and where I think if a project around the Green Arrow gets announced, a lot of people will be like, hey, I know who that character is, I'm excited for it. So in this upcoming DCU, who could play him? And what could the history of the character in this DCU be as well? Well, in this video, I thought we would go over some of the top fan casting choices that I've seen, and some that I haven't seen, for not just the character of Oliver Queen, aka Green Arrow, but also a handful of supporting characters, including Black Canary, and a couple of villains that I could see the first film, including Green Arrow, using. But of course, as you'd expect throughout the video, let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on these choices that I present, as well as any choices you have, because obviously when it comes to a fan cast type situation, people have different options. You can have a really good option that no one's thinking about, and as soon as you say it, hey, everyone's like, wow, that's an amazing option. So let me know your thoughts on mine, as well as your own ones as well in the comments. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, want to drop us, show your support, drop a like, takes 2 seconds. So to start off with, we are going to go through Green Arrow, Oliver Queen. Now I've got 3 here. One I think is a very stock standard choice, where I think it ties into comic accuracy and stuff. One that's a bit of a bit of a curveball, but I think would work, and I don't think there would be a ridiculous amount of complaint in regards to at least level-minded people. And then one, if they go into a Green Arrow that's existed for maybe 10, 15, maybe even 20 years if you really want to push it, but let's say 10 to 15 years. So it sort of covers all bases in regards to stretching, if that makes sense. So the first option here is Austin Butler. He's the most, I think, especially as of recent, in the past, probably post-COVID, I think he's the one that's been fan cast the most. Obviously, there was the whole Charlie Hunnam thing throughout the the DCEU, might I say. And I didn't mind that at first, but then we can, when you hear the fan cast so many times, you just get sick of it. Charlie Hunnam fell into that. Austin Butler hasn't reached that level yet because it's only been a few years. But I think he'd be a good choice. I think he'd definitely be able to play it off in multiple ways. This a not necessarily year 1 Green Arrow, but you could easily make it year 1. But even someone that's within their first 3 to 5 years of being Green Arrow, I think he'd be able to pull it off really, really well. And obviously, I think the big thing is that he does have the look, whether you go for a shorter hair, maybe long hair, whichever way you want to go. But I think he'd be able to pull it off in more ways than one. I think if he got cast, I don't think there'd be a ridiculous amount of complaining. The second option, which is the curveball one, where it definitely doesn't lie in with a lot of expectations or what people would first think of when they say Green Arrow. But I remember when I saw someone mention this fan casting, maybe a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, something, I was like, wow, that's really good. And I really like the actor. He's pretty much great, if not at least very, very solid in everything he's in. And I think you can do a twist on it where it still works in regards to what Oliver Queen represents and even his history and stuff when it comes to his father. And that's Dev Patel. And might be like, well, hold on, he's Indian and stuff like that. But I think you could easily make it very presentable that his dad is still white. His dad is still Robert Queen. It still plays into that thing if you really want to. They don't have to. It's obviously we're in the 2020s now, so you can still play it off where maybe it doesn't have to be that way. But I think he'd just be a really good choice for it. As soon as when I first heard that fan casting, I'm not the one creating it, but when I first heard it, I was like, wow, that just would fit really, really well. And I think he'd be able to play it off extremely well also. So I think if he was he's the one where I'm the curveball casting would work, at least in a way in which I think most people would like it. Obviously, how would, story-wise, how you'd change it, maybe that's a wait and see. But I just like the general concept of him playing the character. And the final one is the older version. That doesn't necessarily mean an old man Oliver Queen, but someone that's been around for 10 plus years, maybe whether it's 10 years exactly, 15, 20, whatever it is. And I went for a very standard one. It might be seen as boring, but I think his general persona could fit into it, especially if it's someone that's more experienced and maybe a bit more laid back after being in the role for a bit, and that's Ryan Gosling. I know it sounds like a bit very stock standard, maybe a bit boring, and there might be a better option, but he's one where I think it would bring attention to the project if he was cast in the role as well. So yeah, it was the one that just sprung to mind when I think of like an old Oliver Queen, as I said, maybe a bit more laid back, maybe leaning into the not the comedy side if you want to put it, but you know what I mean. So I think he'd fit into that older type of Oliver Queen fairly well. But now let's jump into the Black Canary. So similar to Green Arrow, I have 3, and I didn't necessarily put 3 to match up respectively to those 3 Green Arrows, except for the last one. And it's not necessarily to match up with Ryan Gosling's Green Arrow, it's just a Black Canary that's maybe like 10 years into her career as well. 10, 15 years if they want to do that. So the first one isn't actually too much of a surprise, and that's Journey Smollett, or Journey Smollett Bell. I think she just goes by Journey Smollett now. But of course, she was Black Canary, or Dinah Lance, in the Birds of Prey film. Now, the only reason I included her here, because you're like, well, hold on, the DC Universe is a reboot. Well, yeah, but we know there's some things that are still carrying over, like Peacemaker, some of the Suicide Squad stuff and the castings there. Of course, like, you know, Amanda Waller, all that stuff, that's still carrying over into this new DCU because James Gunn created it. Now, James Gunn had nothing to do with Birds of Prey, but it does connect technically to Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, who was in the Suicide Squad, which connects to all the James Gunn stuff as well. And Journey Smollett and James Gunn followed each other as of like over the past month, 2 months or something like that. So this doesn't confirm that she's coming back, but at least it confirms that maybe there's a bit of connection there. And if she continued, I don't think there'd be too much of a debate, like not a debate, what do you call it, like a bit of like anger. I think people are like, hey, she's probably the, you know, in regards to new stuff in that Birds of Prey film, she's probably the best thing. So I don't think there'd be a lot of anger if she continued, just because there's already stuff continuing from the DCEU into this DCU anyway. But I think she could fit into both, maybe being alongside a Green Arrow that's been around for 10, 15 years, as well as a Green Arrow that's only been around for 5 years. So she's probably the choice here out of these 3 that's probably versatile in regards to what Green Arrow she'd, you know, be on the side of, if that makes sense. But the second option is definitely if they're going for like a younger, at least obviously younger Black Canary, but even a younger Green Arrow. And I saw this suggestion, I'm like, that's interesting. And that was that of Renee Rapp. Now, I've never seen her in anything except I watched like half an hour, maybe 40 minutes of that Mean Girls musical, and she was that musical movie thing, and she was in that. I don't think I've seen anything with her outside of that, but she seems to be a decent fan cast for Black Canary. Obviously, the fact that she can sing is probably a big thing as well in regards to why people fan cast her. But based off her look, I can see it. So I just included her because she was one that I was definitely seeing a lot when I was sort of researching the video. So I have to include her. But as I said, outside of like 40 minutes of that Mean Girls musical movie, I haven't seen anything else from her, but she was fine in that. So from what I know, a thumbs up. And the last option it plays into that, like I say older once again, but it's really just a Black Canary that's been around for 10, 15 years. And this really ties back to like one of the OG fan castings. I think people might have been fan casting her as the Black Canary alongside Charlie Hunnam's Green Arrow, I think. And this was Catherine Winnick. And it's just because she's always in my head when I think of like Black Canary fan casts. Just because she was said so much, but it wasn't as like overdone as the Charlie Hunnam Green Arrow fan cast. So have to include her in here. There's probably like some other options. There's probably like a bunch of older, I say older, but you know, like people like their mid, like maybe like late 30s, early 40s, Black, like that would fit into that Black Canary cast, Black Canary, you know, fan cast type of area, but she's just the one that stood out. But now let's jump into the 2 villains I have. So the first one is Count Vertigo. This is a villain that I'd very much like to see in a Green Arrow film, especially the first Green Arrow film they did it. And I've only put 2 fan cast options here. The first one is just someone I think could almost be like weirdly physically imposing, though if you know, if you're sitting across from you, maybe not, but if you was like standing up, it might be, and that's Bill Skarsgård. Of course, he was recently Nosferatu, but of course he played Pennywise and stuff. And if I just think of like Count Vertigo, he's meant to be like still be like physical. He can still do physical stuff, but he's also just like, you know, he obviously has his powers in regards to like destabilizing people and stuff like that. So I think he would be able to fit that Count Vertigo thing as well. But the one I would actually really like to see, I think Bill Skarsgård is more likely to be cast in the role. But the one person I think would be really good in it is Sebastian Stan. Of course, he plays Winter Soldier or Bucky Barnes in the MCU. but I feel like he would nail Count Vertigo. I have no idea why. I just have a feeling if you gave him Count Vertigo, he'd give you a really good Count Vertigo. So Sebastian Stan, I think, is my number one for it. Though I think the most likely out of the two would be Bill Skarsgård, and he might fit the more physically imposing one. But Count Vertigo is not this like really tall dude like Bill Skarsgård is. He's just meant to be like athletic with powers. And the final one I have here, or the final of the two villains, but also the final fan cast character thing, is that of Komodo. He's like the other villain I think would work in like a Green Arrow entry point movie. But if you use Komodo, I would like it if they played off the setup of like that he was more of a son to Robert Queen, because in the comics he was like, he worked at Queen Industries, or was it Queen Industries in the comics? Yeah, whatever it is. He worked for Robert Queen. So he could be presented as like, oh, he was more of a son to Robert Queen than Oliver was. And it could almost play off like, oh, this is like, they were very similar, and then they just took different paths, and that's where Oliver ends up as Green Arrow, and Komodo was Komodo. And I've actually listed 3 actors who I think could play a very charismatic person, but also slip into that villainous side and easily play like a very like serious, vengeful sort of villain type. And I've actually matched them to their respective Green Arrows. We had Austin Butler, Dev Patel, and Ryan Gosling. I've got a Komodo for each of them. So for Austin Butler's Green Arrow, I have Donald Glover. I think he'd work really well in regards to, obviously we can see how charismatic he can be, but then you can see how like very serious and stuff he can be as well. I think Donald Glover would work really well. For Dev Patel's, I have Adam Driver. Like it's not necessarily has to be like the same age range, like they have to be the exact age specifically, but like just around that same rough age. Like I think Adam Driver might be like early 40s and Dev Patel's only like mid 30s and stuff, but they could still play it off as like they're around the same age. So I think Adam Driver would be a really good match to a Dev Patel Green Arrow. And then for Ryan Gosling, I put Riz Ahmed. Once again, I think those actors just, as I said, can play that like that charismatic side of things, like whether it's while they are Komodo, or even if we get like flashbacks and setup stuff and stuff like that, but also like a vengeful villain type, like antagonist to our Green Arrow. I think they'd all be able to do that really, really well. But yeah, those are all the fan castings I have. Of course, you could do like, Roy Harper or, Amir Dearden. It's like a Speedy type situation, and some other side characters and stuff like that, some other villains. But I was just trying to think like realistically in regards to a entry point Green Arrow film in this DCU and what characters that would include. I don't think that'd stretch it too much. I think you get Black Canary maybe, and then 1, maybe 2 villains, but preferably 1, and it might be one of those 2. So that's really just wanted to limit the video and not make it too long. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions on everything we went over. Always curious to hear what you guys are thinking, especially with all this. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.